The stranger by the water. The sun was high above the hills of Beverly, casting warm golden rays over the quiet neighborhood. Most of the houses along the street stood still, wrapped in silence, like secrets tucked behind tall hedges and heavy, iron gates. Birds chirped lazily in the distance, and a sprinkler somewhere clicked in rhythm, sending droplets into the wind like small diamonds. In one of these houses, behind an ivy-covered wall and past a stone pathway, sat a beautiful turquoise swimming pool. It was quiet that morning, until the gate creaked open. Keanu Reeves walked in slowly, holding a towel in one hand and a paperback book in the other. His face was calm, unreadable, with the kind of peace that only came after many storms. He wasn't dressed in anything flashy, just a plain black t-shirt and old jeans rolled up to his calves. His hair was tied back and he wore worn-out sandals. To anyone else, he looked like just another man. But this was his home. Keanu had bought this house years ago, not because it was big or luxurious, but because it reminded him of silence, of space, of time to think. The pool had always been his favorite spot. It was where he read, where he reflected, where he remembered the faces he had lost and the dreams he still chased. He sat at the edge now, dipping his feet into the cool water, flipping open the book. The words of a Russian philosopher met his eyes and he smiled faintly. He didn't notice the woman standing just a few feet away, at least not at first. "Excuse me?" came a sharp voice. Keanu looked up. There she stood, a woman in her mid-40s, wearing oversized sunglasses, holding a phone and dressed in expensive workout clothes. Her expression was tight and her lips curled into a smirk of annoyance. Her name was Karen. At least that's what everyone in the neighborhood called her. "Can I help you?" Keanu asked softly. "You sure can," she said, stepping closer, to the pool. "This is a private residence. What are you doing here?" Keanu blinked, unsure if she was joking. "This is my home," he said quietly, his voice calm. She laughed. "Right, and I'm the Queen of England." Keanu looked around, confused for a second. "I think, there's been some kind of misunderstanding." Karen crossed her arms. "Look, buddy, I don't know who you are or what you're trying to pull, but the owners here don't just let strangers hang out in their backyard, unless you're the pool guy, and even then you're clearly off schedule." He didn't move. He didn't argue. He just offered a gentle smile and said, "I understand. Would it make you feel better if I showed you something?" Before she could answer, he reached into his bag and pulled out a small leather wallet. He handed her his driver's license. She looked at it quickly, then scoffed. "Cute. Fake ID. Keanu Reeves? Really?" He chuckled softly, shaking his head. "It's not fake." Karen's eyes narrowed. "You expect me to believe that Keanu Reeves, the actor, the millionaire, the guy from The Matrix, lives here and dresses like this?" He nodded. "I like peace and quiet, and I don't like to draw attention." But Karen wasn't listening. She pulled out her phone and started recording. "You know what? I'm calling security. Let's see what they say about this." Keanu sighed and leaned back on his elbows, gazing up at the sky. "You might want to point that camera away from the pool," he said. "It's not safe to walk so close." But it was too late. In her rush to step back and frame him better in her video, Karen tripped on the edge of the pool. With a loud shriek, she slipped and fell in, phone and all. The splash echoed around the backyard like a clap of thunder. Keanu jumped up instantly, dropping his book and rushing to the edge. He reached down as she came up, gasping, her hair stuck to her face, her sunglasses floating away. "Take my hand," he said firmly. She grabbed it without thinking. He pulled her out effortlessly, setting her gently on the edge of the pool. She sat there coughing, wiping her eyes, drenched from head to toe. Her phone was dead. Her pride soaked. Keanu handed her a towel without a word. For the first time, Karen looked at him with different eyes. Something about the way he moved, the calm in his face, the strength in his arms. It unsettled her. "You didn't have to help me," she muttered, her voice softer now. "You were in trouble," he said simply. "Of course I helped. But I was so rude to you." Keanu shrugged. People have bad days. They sat in silence for a few moments, the sound of water dripping from her clothes mixing with the gentle ripple of the pool. Then, without warning, a young girl came running through the gate. She was maybe 11 or 12 with curly hair and bright eyes. "Daddy! Daddy!" she shouted, skipping toward Keanu. "Hey, Bug," he said, standing and lifting her into his arms. Karen's jaw dropped. "This is your daughter?" she asked. Keanu nodded. "My goddaughter. I watch her sometimes." The girl looked at Karen, then whispered, "Is she okay?" "She fell in," Keanu said gently. "But she's all right now." The girl smiled. "You're always helping people." Karen stood slowly, her legs trembling not from the fall but from something else. "Shame. I think I should go," she said. Keanu nodded. "You can stay until you're dry." But Karen shook her head. "I've done enough damage." As she walked away, Keanu picked up his book again, sat by the water, and resumed reading. His goddaughter curled beside him, resting her head on his shoulder. Karen paused at the gate. For a long moment she looked back, not at the man she thought was an intruder, but at a stranger who had shown her more kindness than she deserved. And deep down, something inside her shifted. She would return. But not the same. This was only the beginning. Whispers in the neighborhood the next morning in the quiet suburb of Brentwood. Word had already spread. Karen's dramatic pool fall had made its way through the neighborhood grapevine faster than wildfire. Not because of the fall itself, but because of who pulled her out. "Did you hear? Keanu Reeves lives here," Mrs. Larson whispered to her neighbor while trimming roses. "You mean the Keanu Reeves? The actor?" Her friend gasped. "Yes. Karen tried to kick him out of his own backyard. Thought he was a pool cleaner or something." Karen, on the other hand, was hiding behind closed blinds. She sat on her pristine white sofa with a cup of tea that had long gone cold. The video she tried to take had been destroyed by water, but her embarrassment was still very real. Worse, she couldn't stop replaying the moment he extended his hand and helped her out of the pool, without judgment, without anger. She had misjudged him, and she knew it. Meanwhile, across the street, Keanu sat in his garden, legs crossed beneath him, sipping black coffee. He was reading again, same book, but this time with his goddaughter Mia curled up beside him. "Uncle Keanu," she asked, "why was that lady so mean to you yesterday?" He looked up from the page, thoughtful. "Sometimes people are scared of what they don't understand, or they carry pain and don't know where to put it. But you helped her anyway." He smiled. "Helping isn't about who deserves it. It's about who needs it." Mia nodded, then looked at the flowers blooming around them. "I want to be like you when I grow up," Keanu chuckled. "I want to be like you when I grow up." Just then, the front gate creaked. They both looked up. Karen stood there, awkward, holding a tray of muffins. Her hair was pulled back and her face was bare. No makeup, no sunglasses, no attitude. "Hi," she said quietly. Mia ran inside, sensing the moment wasn't for her. Keanu set the book aside and stood. I made these," Karen said, extending the tray. "They're banana nut. I know it doesn't fix anything, but it's a start." Keanu nodded, accepting the tray. "Thank you. I didn't know," she whispered. "I judged you because of how you looked. I thought I knew everything just by looking at you." He tilted his head gently. "And what do you think now?" She exhaled. "I think I know nothing. And maybe that's a good place to begin." They sat at the patio table. The silence between them wasn't heavy this time. It was open, like fresh air after a storm. "I've been bitter for a long time," Karen said after a pause. "My husband left 3 years ago. I had to sell my practice. I moved here thinking a fresh start would fix everything, but instead I just built walls and judged everyone who didn't look like me." Keanu listened, not interrupting, not rushing her. "You live so quietly. No one knew it was you. No flashy cars, no parties. Just books and coffee. He smiled. Peace is louder than fame. Karen studied him. Why do you live like this? You could have anything, anywhere. Keanu's eyes darkened a little, but he kept his tone calm. Because fame took people from me. It took time, too. This is what's left when the noise isn't gone. Quiet mornings, real conversations, small kindnesses. And I hold on to that. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Do you forgive me? She finally asked. He looked her in the eyes. I already did. Tears welled in hers. I want to change. Keanu placed his hand gently on the table. Then start by listening. Later that evening, Karen did something she hadn't done in years. She knocked on her neighbors' doors and introduced herself. No long stories, no defensiveness. Just her name and an apology for never taking the time to know them. One neighbor said, "Wow, you're brave. Not everyone would admit they were wrong." Another said, "We all make mistakes, but not all of us come back to fix them." Word spread again, but this time it wasn't mockery. It was admiration. Still, one person wasn't ready to let things go. His name was Greg. He lived 2 houses down from Keanu. Tall, smug, always wearing cologne strong enough to knock out a bee. He prided himself on knowing everyone's business and never being wrong. I don't buy it, he told his wife that night. The guy's probably pretending to be Keanu. Nobody rich lives that quietly. He's hiding something. Greg had always wanted to be the center of attention. And now that Karen was getting it for apologizing to a celebrity, his ego burned. So he made a plan. The next day, while Keanu and Mia were walking toward the community library, Greg approached them. "Morning," he said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Good morning," Keanu replied politely. "Say," Greg continued, "heard a rumor. People say you're Keanu Reeves, that true?" Keanu paused. "I am." "Got any proof?" Greg asked, crossing his arms. Keanu looked at Mia, then back at Greg. "What kind of proof?" Greg smirked. "You know, something public. Autographs, maybe a driver's license. Anything to show you're not just a lookalike trying to scam attention." Mia's face scrunched with confusion. "But he's really Keanu." Greg ignored her. Keanu reached into his pocket and took out his license. Greg snatched it quickly and inspected it, turning it over like it might reveal some trick. "Huh," he muttered. "Well, I guess this looks real." He handed it back, disappointed. "But if you are really him," Greg added, leaning closer, "then why don't you come to the next homeowner meeting? You know, speak in public, let everyone know it's really you. Or are you hiding something?" Keanu didn't flinch. "I'm not hiding, but I'm not interested in proving anything." "Either." "Yeah, that's what I thought," Greg said smugly and walked off. Mia looked up at Keanu. "He's mean." Keanu smiled softly. "Maybe. Or maybe he's just scared too." Mia frowned. "Scared of what?" "Of being small in a world that tells you to be big." They walked on. But inside something had shifted. Keanu had always tried to stay out of sight. But now, people knew, the mask was off. And not everyone would accept him quietly. The storm was coming, but Keanu had faced storms before. The meeting and the mirror, the community hall was small, with beige walls and folding chairs that squeaked when people sat. Once, a month, neighbors would gather there to discuss minor issues. Parking violations, noise complaints, landscaping fines. Usually only a handful showed up. But this month, it was packed. People weren't there for shrub trimming or street cleaning. Updates, they were there for him. Karen sat near the front, fidgeting with her bracelet. She had spent the week doing small acts of kindness around the neighborhood. Helping an elderly man carry groceries, walking a sick neighbor's dog, even hosting a tiny lemonade stand with local kids. Yet no matter what she did, the memory of that day by the pool clung to her like wet clothes. She looked over her shoulder. There he was. Keanu Reeves walked in quietly, wearing jeans and a plain navy hoodie. No entourage, no sunglasses, no loud entrance. Just him, calm, humble, and somehow still carrying the weight of the world in his eyes. People whispered. Some smiled. Others stared. Greg leaned over to the meeting chairperson, Dana, and whispered something. She nodded. After the usual agenda, Dana cleared her throat. Before we close, I understand we have a guest among us today. Someone many of you might recognize. Mr. Reeves, would you mind saying a few words? Keanu stood slowly. He didn't take the podium. Instead, he walked to the center of the room and looked around. Thank you, he began, his voice steady but soft. I didn't come here expecting to speak. I moved here for peace, for quiet. But sometimes life has other plans. He paused. I've played many roles in front of the camera. But who we are off screen, that's the real story. People leaned in. When I bought my house here, I wanted a place where no one treated me differently. Not because they didn't recognize me, but because they didn't need to. I wanted to just be a neighbor, a man who reads, a man who walks his goddaughter to the library, a man who listens. A hush filled the room. But last week, he continued, glancing briefly at Karen, I was reminded that we all carry assumptions, and sometimes those assumptions blind us. Greg shifted uncomfortably in his seat. I'm not here to shame anyone, Keanu said. We've all made mistakes. What matters is what we do after the mistake. Do we defend it, or do we grow from it? He looked down for a second, then back up. Fame is loud, but dignity is quiet. And I think our world needs more quiet strength. More humility, more kindness, especially in communities like this. He stepped back and gave a small bow. Thank you for welcoming me. The room erupted in soft claps, some people even standing. Karen's eyes welled with tears, not just because of what he said, but because of what it stirred in everyone. Greg, however, wasn't finished. He stood abruptly. Yeah, that's all very touching, but let's not forget, this neighborhood has rules. Maybe instead of giving speeches, Mr. Reeves could consider contributing to the upkeep. I noticed his fence hasn't been trimmed, and there's been some suspicious traffic near his driveway. Dana frowned. Greg, this isn't the time. But Keanu raised his hand gently. It's all right. He turned to Greg. You're right, Keanu said. Rules matter. If I've overlooked anything, I'll take care of it. Greg blinked, surprised at the calm response. Keanu continued. But maybe we should also look at the rules that aren't written, the ones we carry in our hearts. The rule of treating people with decency. The rule of listening before judging. A quiet voice in the back said, I like that rule better. Everyone chuckled lightly. Greg sat down, his mouth tight. After the meeting, people came up to Keanu one by one. A retired teacher said, I used to teach poetry. You spoke like one today. A young man added, Thanks for being real. You gave us all something to think about. Even Dana, the chairwoman, smiled warmly. You've changed the tone of this place already. Karen waited until the crowd thinned, then she stepped forward. Thank you, she whispered. Not just for forgiving me, but for giving all of us a mirror. Keanu nodded. Mirrors show us who we are, but they don't tell us who we must be. Her hands trembled. I want to be better. I really do. Then start small, he said. The world changes with little things. Over the next few days, something unexpected happened in the neighborhood. People began talking more, smiling at each other, sharing small favors. Kids played together at the park without being shooed away. Someone even painted a community bench that had been broken for months. It was as if Keanu's quiet presence had reminded everyone what being human really meant. Except Greg. He couldn't stand the shift. He's manipulating everyone. He hissed to his wife one night. This is some Hollywood image rehab thing. Or maybe he's just kind, she said flatly. Greg gritted his teeth. He started watching Keanu's house from his office window. Every time someone walked in or out, he jotted it down. He even installed a camera facing the street. His obsession grew. Then one evening he noticed something. A black van pulled up. Two people stepped out. one in a suit, the other in a dress. They carried a case with them and were greeted by Keanu. Greg grabbed his phone and took photos. "Uh-huh," he muttered. Just wait until I show the committee. He's running some secret operation." But what Greg didn't know was that the visitors were part of a charity organization Keanu had been donating quietly for years. And this night, they came to plan a fundraiser for homeless children. Not for press, not for credit, but to help. Meanwhile, Karen began volunteering at a local shelter. It was slow work, sorting clothes, making sandwiches, listening to stories she never thought she'd hear. But it grounded her. One night, after handing out blankets in the rain, she came home soaked and tired. And yet, for the first time in years, she felt full. She sat on her porch and wrote a letter. "Dear Keanu, you don't know how much you changed my life. I thought kindness was weakness. I thought silence was emptiness. But now I see it's the other way around. Thank you. Kay." She didn't send it. She didn't need to. The change had already begun, but not everyone was at peace. Greg's next move would cross a line, and once he did, nothing would be the same again. The setup late at night, Greg sat in his dark home office, the glow of his computer screen lighting his face. He had been watching Keanu's house for weeks. He had folders now, pictures, timestamps, a list of guests, even a drawn-up map of the property. Obsession had replaced curiosity, and jealousy had replaced logic. His wife no longer spoke to him about it. Every time she tried, he would brush her off, say he was protecting the neighborhood. But deep down, Greg wasn't trying to protect anything. He just couldn't stand how Keanu made people feel better about themselves, without even trying. And that night, he was ready to act. He dialed a number. "Hello, this is the Neighborhood Watch Hotline." Greg lowered his voice. "I have a tip. Suspicious activity. It's been going on for weeks. Unmarked vans, people coming and going at odd hours. The house on Pine Street, number 72. Thank you for your report, sir. We'll notify the authorities." He smiled. The next morning, Keanu was in his kitchen pouring oatmeal into a bowl when there was a knock on the door. 3 knocks. Firm and official, he opened it to find 2 uniformed officers. "Good morning," one said politely. "We received a report of unusual activity at this residence. Do you mind if we ask you a few questions?" Keanu nodded. "Of course." Mia came running from the hallway holding a drawing. "Uncle Keanu, I finished the picture," but she froze when she saw the officers. Keanu knelt and smiled at her. "Everything's okay, Bug. Go show that to Auntie Claire." The girl nodded and ran off. Keanu turned back to the officers. "Come in. Would you like some coffee?" They blinked, surprised. Sure." Inside, they sat at the kitchen table while Keanu handed them warm mugs and explained everything. The guests, charity workers, the van, a delivery for donated winter jackets, the traffic, volunteers, social workers, and neighbors helping organize the upcoming fundraiser. "You're welcome to check the garage," he said, offering them the key. The officers looked at each other, then nodded. One went to inspect, while the other asked, "You're Keanu Reeves, right?" He smiled. "Yes. Never expected to find you here." "Me neither," he replied gently. Minutes later, the first officer returned and said, "Everything's clean. Just boxes of supplies." The second stood. "Sorry to trouble you, sir. Sometimes we get reports from overzealous residents." Keanu nodded, unbothered. "You were just doing your job. Thank you for being respectful." As they left, one turned and said, "By the way, your words at the meeting last week, they meant a lot. My brother's been struggling and something you said helped me reach out." Keanu offered a quiet nod. "I'm glad." The door closed. Across the street, Greg watched with a frown. "They didn't arrest him," he muttered. "How is that possible?" His wife finally spoke. "Because he's done nothing wrong. He's fooling everyone," Greg snapped. "Or maybe you're fooling yourself." He glared at her but said nothing. Later that afternoon, Karen arrived at Keanu's house carrying a few envelopes. "These are the first donations," she said, handing them over. "From the neighbors. People really believe in what you're doing." Keanu smiled and set them on the counter. "Thank you. Are you okay?" she asked gently. "I heard about the officers." He nodded. "It's fine. Sometimes shadows just need light to show what's really there." She looked at him for a long moment. "You're not just peaceful. You're brave." He shook his head. "Not brave. Just stubborn in the right direction." They laughed softly. It felt easy. Honest. Karen's voice grew serious. "Can I ask something? What made you this way?" Keanu looked out the window for a long moment before answering. "I lost my best friend to cancer. Then the woman I loved. We were expecting a child. She gave birth too early. The baby didn't make it. A year later, she was gone too." Karen's face crumbled. "I didn't know." "Most people don't," he said quietly. "But pain can break you or shape you. I chose to let it shape me." She reached out and touched his hand. "Thank you for sharing that." Just then, Mia came running in with a flyer. "Look, I made one for the fundraiser." It was hand-drawn, colorful, full of stars and hearts. Keanu beamed. "It's perfect." They posted it on the fridge. A few days later, the fundraiser began. Neighbors gathered in the open courtyard beside Keanu's home. Tables were set with baked goods, clothes for donation, and crafts made by local kids. A small stage had been built and a banner read, "Hope begins with one hand." Karen brought balloons. Mrs. Larson brought her famous blueberry pie. Even Dana, the chairwoman, donated half the event funds herself. But one person wasn't there. Greg. He watched from his window, arms crossed, scowling. But when the music began and the kids started laughing and dancing, something inside him cracked. Then came the final twist. Around sunset, a luxury SUV pulled into the neighborhood. Out stepped a tall man in a crisp suit, Bryce Langston, head of the state's largest shelter network. He approached Keanu and shook his hand. "Thank you for what you've done here. This event, it's not just local. We've had coverage from statewide news." Keanu nodded humbly. "I just opened the gate. Others walked through." Bryce turned to the crowd and made a short speech. "I've seen many fundraisers, but rarely have I seen a whole neighborhood transformed by kindness. That's what happened here. Because one man didn't turn away. Because one woman apologized. Because a group of strangers became neighbors again." Everyone clapped. Karen looked around, blinking back tears. Keanu smiled, but then a loud voice cut through the applause. "Wait a minute." It was Greg. He stomped into the crowd, waving papers. "This is a scam," he shouted. "You're all being fooled." People turned, confused. Greg held up photos and notes. "He's playing some long con. I've documented it all. The deliveries, the people coming and going, the cameras. He's manipulating you." But no one clapped. No one cheered. They only stared. Keanu stepped forward. "Greg, I understand your concern, but I haven't hidden anything. The officers came. They saw. They asked. They left." Bryce added, "Sir, I personally verify all donations. There is no fraud here." Greg's face flushed. "You're blind. All of you." Karen stepped forward. "No, Greg, we were blind. For years. To each other. To the kindness we ignored. But not anymore." Greg's hands trembled. "He's not a hero." Keanu looked at him gently. "I'm not a hero, Greg. Just a man trying to live better than his pain." Greg's anger cracked, and beneath it, loneliness. He turned and walked away. No one followed. As the evening ended, lanterns lit the courtyard in soft light. Keanu sat by the pool, Mia beside him, watching the stars come out. "You okay?" she asked. He nodded. "We did something good." She leaned against him. "You always do." But he didn't answer. His mind was elsewhere. He knew Greg wasn't finished. and the next move could be the one that broke everything. The breaking point, it had been 3 days since the fundraiser. The lanterns were gone, but their warmth still lingered in the neighborhood. People had started waving to one another again. Front yards were filled with conversation, not silence. Children rode bikes in groups instead of alone. Something real had shifted, but not for Greg. In his darkened study, he scrolled through his phone, his jaw tight, his heart heavy with bitterness. The fundraiser had been a success. People had smiled, cried, hugged, and they had all thanked Keanu. "It's like he's some kind of saint," Greg muttered. His wife walked in and paused. "Greg, please, let it go." He turned sharply. "Let what go? Lies? Manipulation? This whole act? Or maybe," she said softly, "you need to ask why this bothers you so much." Greg said nothing. She left quietly. Alone again. He stared at a photo of Keanu standing beside the charity head, smiling with a group of neighborhood kids. The photo had gone viral. Even local news stations had called the neighborhood a shining example of community healing. But all Greg saw was a shadow growing bigger than his own, and so he made the call. The next morning, Keanu stepped outside and found an envelope taped to his gate. He opened it slowly. Inside was an official notice from the neighborhood board. "Cease unauthorized gatherings on residential property. Violation of Local Housing Code Section 12B. Below that was a warning. Further violations may result in legal action." Keanu stood still. He looked around. The houses nearby, once silent and suspicious, now felt like homes again. And yet, someone had pushed back hard enough to try and shut him down. Inside, Karen was sipping tea when he walked in, the letter in hand. She read it once and sighed deeply. "Greg." "Likely," Keanu said. "This is serious." He nodded. "I know." "What are you going to do?" "Nothing." She blinked. "What?" "I'm not going to fight back. Not directly. That's not who I am." She stood. "Then let me say something." He placed a hand on hers gently. "Karen, this is bigger than him. If we answer anger with more anger, the cycle continues." She looked down, then whispered, "Then what?" "We answer it with proof. With love. With more kindness than he knows how to handle." The following weekend, the second community event went ahead. This time it was smaller, held at the local park instead of Keanu's house. The theme was simple: stories that heal. People brought journals, poems, drawings, and shared moments from their past that shaped who they were. One elderly man stood up and said, "I served in a war. For years I couldn't talk about it. But today, because of this place, I can." Teenage girl shared a poem about losing her father. A single mom brought her 3 kids and spoke about rebuilding their lives. Keanu sat quietly, listening. But even here, Greg showed up. This time, he didn't yell. He just filmed. "What are you going to do with that?" Dana asked, frowning. Greg shrugged. "Just gathering evidence. This is still pushing property rules. And people should know that. No one's forcing you to be here," she said. He ignored her. Later that night, Keanu was sweeping the park grounds after the event. Karen stayed back to help him. "He won't stop," she said quietly. "Maybe," Keanu replied. "But maybe something else will stop him." "Like what?" "Truth." The next morning, Keanu received another letter. This time, not a warning. It was an official complaint filed with the city. It accused him of using his home for unlicensed nonprofit work. It included claims of noise disturbance, unauthorized guests, and misuse of private property. Attached were photos, grainy, zoomed in, images that Greg had taken. Keanu stared at them, then he turned them over. "He's not just angry anymore," Karen said. "He's trying to destroy you." Keanu nodded slowly. "Then we show them everything." Within days, Keanu contacted the city office. He invited the board and city officials to his home for a full walkthrough. Not a show, not a speech, just transparency. When they arrived, he opened every room, every cabinet, every box. I'm not running a nonprofit from here, he explained. We hosted a fundraiser. Nothing was sold. All donations went directly through the official charity account. The officials nodded and took notes. Then they sat down for tea in his backyard, beneath the trees. One asked, "Why go through all this trouble?" Keanu smiled. "Because when someone throws darkness at you, you don't answer with more darkness. You light a candle." By the end of the meeting, the officials shook his hand and said they would dismiss the complaint. But Greg wasn't finished. That night he took it further. He posted a long, angry message online tagging local news and forums. He claimed Keanu was hiding behind a celebrity persona to influence people, manipulating the neighborhood, and operating outside the rules. It spread fast. Some people questioned it, but most people didn't. They shared support for Keanu. Comments flooded in. "He helped my son get new shoes for school. He sat with my mother when no one else would. He bought groceries for our shelter, no cameras, no press. Even strangers defended him." One woman wrote, "I've never met Keanu Reeves, but the world could use more people like him." But then came the comment that hit Greg hardest. It was from his own wife. She wrote, "Sometimes the ones screaming the loudest are just afraid of being ignored. But noise doesn't make you right. Kindness does." It got over 1,000 likes. In 2 hours, Greg slammed his laptop shut. Alone. Again. And this time, the silence felt louder than ever. The next morning, Keanu walked outside and found something surprising, a folded note on his doorstep. It wasn't signed, but it said, "I tried to break you. I thought hurting you would make me feel bigger, but it only made me smaller. You are stronger than me, and that terrifies me. I'm sorry." Keanu read it twice, then folded it carefully and tucked it into the back of his book. He didn't need to know who sent it. He already knew. But there was still one part of the story left, because what happened next, no one in the neighborhood was ready for it, not even Keanu. Full circle, the neighborhood had changed. It wasn't just in the way people waved now, or how kids played longer in the yards, or even how the air felt lighter. It was in the small things. Mother leaving soup on her neighbor's porch without a note. A teenager walking an elderly man's dog without being asked. People knocking on doors just to say hello. And at the center of it all, quietly, still avoiding attention, was Keanu. He had kept his promise, not to fight darkness with darkness, not to run, not to prove anything, but to stay. And by staying, he had changed everything. Then, on a Thursday morning, everything paused. A fire broke out. It started in the hills just outside the neighborhood. Strong winds swept it down faster than anyone expected. Emergency alerts rang out. People packed hurriedly. Smoke filled the sky. Ash fell like snow. Sirens screamed down the roads. Keanu stood on his porch, watching the clouds of black rise above. The trees. The firefighters were already setting up roadblocks. Karen ran toward him, holding her cat in one arm and a bag in the other. "They're saying evacuate," she shouted. Keanu nodded. "Go to the shelter. I'll help anyone who's still here." She grabbed his hand. "Keanu, please, it's dangerous." He looked at her, calm. "I'll be okay." Before she could argue, he ran toward the Larson house. Mrs. Larson used a walker and wouldn't move fast on her own. Within 30 minutes, the fire was visible from the rooftops. Panic had started to take over, but Keanu was everywhere. He helped carry Mrs. Larson to a neighbor's car. He knocked on every door. He helped an elderly man lift his oxygen tank into a vehicle. He calmed down a boy who had gotten separated from his parents in the smoke. Even as flames crept closer, he never stopped moving. Then came the scream. "Help! Please! Someone!" It was Greg. People turned toward the far end of the street. Greg's house had caught a spark from a falling ember. The side wall was burning and smoke billowed out the windows. He was stuck inside. Keanu ran, without hesitation. Neighbors shouted for him to stop. But he didn't. The inside of Greg's house was thick with smoke. Keanu covered his mouth with his sleeve and moved low to the ground. "Greg!" he shouted. A coughing voice answered from deeper in the hall. Keanu found him slumped near the stairs, dazed and unable to stand. My leg. I fell. Keanu lifted him up, one arm over his shoulder. Together they stumbled through the smoke. The heat was unbearable. The roof groaned above them. You came back, Greg whispered, barely conscious. Of course I did, Keanu said. They made it out just seconds before the roof collapsed. The crowd outside gasped as Keanu dragged Greg into the open, coughing, eyes red but alive. Paramedics rushed forward. Karen ran over, tears on her face. Keanu looked up at her, exhausted but still standing. He's okay, he said softly. Then he collapsed. Keanu woke in a hospital room. A quiet beat beside him marked the rhythm of his heart. He turned his head and saw Karen sitting beside his bed, asleep in the chair. Greg was in the next bed, leg wrapped in a brace, he whispered. You saved my life. Keanu didn't reply. Greg continued, voice shaking. I tried to destroy yours, and you still came back for me. Keanu finally looked at him, because no one is too far gone. Tears rolled down Greg's face. I'm so sorry. Keanu reached over and gripped his hand gently. Then start again. A week later, the fire was finally under control. Many houses were damaged. Some were gone entirely. But the community stayed strong. They helped each other rebuild. The fundraiser fund, originally meant for the shelter, was split. Half went to the fire relief, and the shelter still received the rest thanks to extra donations. And one day, at the center of the courtyard, something new appeared. A bench. On it, carved in wood, were the words, "Kindness is the fire that never burns out." Below that, a small plaque, "Donated by the people. Inspired by one." The next time Keanu sat by his pool, it wasn't alone. Mia was beside him. Karen sat nearby, sipping lemonade. Greg limped up the path, still healing, carrying a tray of cookies. Brought these, he said, awkward. Keanu smiled. Thank you. Greg sat down, and for the first time there was no tension, just quiet, a peaceful kind of silence. Mia looked up. Uncle Keanu, what happens next? He looked out at the water, thinking. Next, he said, we live, we love, we help. And when the world gets loud again, we stay quiet, and we keep being kind. And as the sun set behind the hills, its golden light touching everything gently, the once divided neighborhood sat together, not as strangers, not even just as neighbors, but as family.